1 Corinthians chapter 4. Broad-minded. About being broad-minded. 1 Corinthians chapter 4, starting in verse 1. Says there, let a man so count of us as the ministers of Christ and stewards of the mysteries of God. It's easy to skip over that. What he's really saying here, sometimes it can be tough getting through the Old English, but what he's saying, okay, how do you measure us? Measure us, he's talking about himself and Apollos. Measure us as ministers of Christ and stewards of the mysteries of God. Measure us as ministers and teachers of the Word. Not just teachers, ministers and teachers. Ministers and teachers of Jesus Christ in the Word. It's easy to move past that. But here's a man who was born into privilege. He was a citizen, which was very valuable. He had the equivalent of at least a PhD today. Came from a wealthy family. He was a Pharisee, of the Pharisees, and yet he says, how do you measure me? Measure me as a teacher and minister of the Word. To him, what was important was his relationship with Jesus Christ. The ministry, what God had called him to do. And this is important for us, because we all are measured different ways by different people in different circumstances. And we think of ourselves in different roles. So any one of you at any particular time can think of yourself as somebody's son or daughter, or as a brother or sister to someone in the natural. You can think of yourself as a parent. You can think of yourself as an employee or an employer. You can think of yourself as a friend. You can think of yourself in many different ways. But the way that he says, I want you to choose to judge me and to follow me and to look at me as a minister of the gospel. That was the most important thing to him, and so that's why I said, look at me that way. And that's important because how do we want people to look at us? We want people to look at us in the context of us being believers or not. See, that's the challenge. Do we interface with other people in terms of who we are as professionals or who we are as people, or do we want them to really look at us as simply as believers? It's interesting because in every other context there's a measure of self in it. Look at me because I'm a professional and you can rely on me or whatever. It's like, same thing with friendship, whatever. There's a personal element. But when you look at someone as a minister of the gospel, as a representative of Jesus Christ, all of a sudden you become invisible. It's not about you. And in the world today, it's all about you. So it's kind of opposite to what the world offers. It said, look at me. Don't even look at me in terms of me. Look at me in terms of who I am in Jesus Christ, who I belong to, and who I serve. That's important for us as well. But we can't do that unless that's where our heart is, unless that's what's important to us. Let a man so count of us as the ministers of Christ and stewards of the mysteries of God. Moreover, it is required in stewards that a man be found faithful. Okay, when he's talking about a steward, he's talking about an employee, someone you rely on. He said the primary thing is they have to be faithful. And what he's talking about there is they have to be reliable. They have to do what they're told. An employee has no value if the employee doesn't do what they're told to do.
Amen.
Because that's the essence of employment. You're told to do something and you do it. The less likely you are to do that, the less valuable you are as an employee, to the point where if you can't do anything that you're told, they basically have to fire you. And so that's what he's saying. You know, this is basic. It doesn't matter what you're doing. A steward or an employee has to be found faithful, to have any value at all, has to do what they're told to do. And then he goes on to say, but with me it is a very small thing that I should be judged of you or of man's judgment. Yea, I judge not mine own self. He says, you know what? To me, it doesn't matter what you think of me. Now that's a big one today because everybody worries about what they're thought of. You know, it's all about posing. It's about image, and it's like I really don't care. He said, I don't care what you think. And he says, it's a small thing that I should be judged of you, or a man's judgment. It doesn't matter what the standard is. It doesn't matter. And he says, I don't even judge myself. He's saying it's not even about what I think of me. Wow. So what's going on here? If I don't care what you think of me, and I don't care, and it doesn't matter what I think of myself, what is he getting at? Now this is pretty broad-minded. If you think about it, it's like, yeah, okay, you know, when you're worried about what other people think about you, the more you worry about what people think about you, the more you become bound. It's like, well, I don't know if I should do this because they might think badly. And I don't know if I should do this because they might think badly of that. It's like, well, I don't know. And so all of a sudden your hands are tied. You can't do anything. You got analysis paralysis. I go, I don't know. Let's ask Grandma. It'll cripple you. He says, I don't even judge myself. Wow. And it's like this. He says, you know what he really means by that is that my conscience is clean. I don't even judge myself. Why? Big is my conscience. If my conscience is bothering me, I'm thinking about what I'm doing. It's like, so it's wrong. Paul himself said, anything that's not of faith is sin. So it's like when you have confidence when you do it in the Holy Spirit, and you do it, and then you don't second guess it, you don't worry about it, you just do it. Because if you're not doing it that way, you're second guessing afterwards, that's not faith, and if it's not faith, it's sin. Why? Because you weren't doing it in the Holy Spirit. When you're doing things in the Holy Spirit, you have perfect confidence. Yeah, I judge not my own self, for I know nothing by myself. He says, I don't know, yet I am hereby justified. He said, I can't judge myself. Why? Because even though my conscience may be clear, it doesn't mean that it's true. We've all met people that were absolutely sure that what they did, they were justified in doing, and you know that it was absolutely wrong. But they have clear consciences because they've got this mindset. It's like, well, I'm entitled to it, so I was entitled to do whatever I felt like doing. They were sincere, but they were sincerely wrong. But it didn't make them less sincere.
Okay.
For I know nothing by myself, yet am I not hereby justified. I'm not justified by the fact that I have a clear conscience because I might be deceiving myself. We're really getting broad-minded here. This can really mess your head up. You say, okay, I don't care what you think, and I don't care what I think, and I don't think anything, but I'm not. That isn't the standard. The fact that I have a clear conscience is not the standard because I could be deceiving myself. You could really get stuck in your head with all of this. But he goes on, he's a practical man. Yet I'm not hereby justified, but he that judges me is the Lord. You say, okay, so even if I deceive myself, at the end it doesn't matter because God is a judge of what I do. Ultimately, that's the only one that cares. Why? Because on God's say so, I either go to heaven or I go to hell. So your opinion doesn't have any effect on that. My opinion has no effect on that. God's opinion has every effect on that. So I don't have to worry about what you think, what I think. All I got to worry about is what God thinks. I got to measure up to His standard. For I know nothing by myself, yet am I not hereby justified, but he that judges me is the Lord. Therefore judge nothing before the time. That's a tough one. We love to judge things before the time. We just don't realize that it's not the time to judge. Let me explain. You know, someone does something, and you get into trouble, and you get angry. And it's not right, and it's not fair. But that's not the end of the story. You haven't seen it play out yet. You haven't seen where it's going. You haven't seen what God's working in you and in the other person. And until you can see that, you don't have the right to judge. You were doing your job well, and then someone set you up for something and you got fired. And you're angry. That's not the end of the story. What is God doing in the situation? They might be sending you up to get a better job. And yet you are crying in your soup because you got fired from a job you don't like in the first place. How about that? See, you see my